the final main event draft coverage of the year. Terp.
This is it.
It came quick. I'll just say that. It came quick. I feel like we just started these with our fantasy pros coverage. Obviously, we had best ball, never too early, just at the start of the year. But here we are, 4 days now until the NFL season starts. Main events are underway. I know you've drafted in main events. They're popping off. Fantasy pros are flying off this weekend. And here we are, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time, a little late night showing main event live coverage. And honestly, and some years ADP kind of stabilizes by that point. You know, we're getting not this year with the news that we're
not
getting.
This year. It's been a wild week, man. Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor news last week. It's been insane.
So obviously, as you said last week, we were kind of covering the Jonathan Taylor and where his ADP was going. I believe that was the Fantasy Pros Championship live draft coverage. I think I did that with Balky, and we were kind of discussing Jonathan Taylor and seeing where he's falling. So this is our first time in the main event seeing where Jonathan Taylor falls. We can maybe talk about him a little later on, but the big one is obviously, I want your initial thoughts, and obviously maybe you can let us know with your drafts in the main event you've done, where you're seeing in the main event, where do you draft Cooper Kupp? Because the latest news is he went to Minnesota to see a specialist to try and figure out how to best handle his hamstring, which is not what you want to hear a week before the season. It's not clearly something that's not low grade or low concern. Positive side, he's not been placed on the PUP list. So he is at least
be devastated if that were that. I mean, that would be.
There has to be some certainty, right? Not certainty, I should say. There's some expectation, at least by the Rams, that they think at least that he could play within those first 4 weeks of the season. But really a weird spot. I feel like, you tell me if I'm wrong, I think Mojo tweeted the latest he went was kind of middle third, but you're kind of seeing him consistently go kind of mid to late second still. Just people the chance. But it's going to be an interesting year. And I know I'm rambling here. I want to let you get a word in. But if you could also talk on, there's a lot of people who are getting these Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson stacks, which adds a whole nother twist to this kind of format and all tournament formats, I should say, because of these late possibilities. And imagine if someone has Justin Jefferson, Jonathan Taylor, and Cooper Kupp this late, like if all of them happen to get playing time, I should say not miss a ton. So I've talked a lot. My question to you is, where are you taking Cooper Kupp? Where have you seen Cooper Kupp gone? And then kind of what are your thoughts on just some of these intriguing stacks that people can make with these kind of late news?
The main event I did at 7:00 tonight. Cooper Kupp went mid-second round. That's where I think he's going to stay unless there's some news that pops up. I mean, some of these third round shares of Cooper Kupp are just amazing. The teams of Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce that are getting them. I mean, that's a dream. I think you have to take the risk. I mean, everything that we do when we're doing these drafts, you're taking risks, and you have a potential wide receiver one that's fallen to the second round with a lot of unknown right now. It's a wild gamble, and it's one that, like, it depends again how many teams you have. If these guys who are drafting a bunch of teams, you got to start adding some teams, because you're getting some cheap Cooper Kupp that we've seen all the discounts that happened this summer. The Cooper Kupp discount might be the best right now. I mean, could it take a couple weeks? Yes, but if you can figure out a way to navigate those couple weeks and then get a Cooper Kupp back with a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, I don't see how you pass it up, especially being at the end of the first round. I mean, at the end of the first round, the beginning of the first round, but the end of the second round, third round, which a lot of drafters are saying they don't really love right now. So to get a guy like Cooper Kupp that falls back to you, I think you have to take the risk and just trust your drafting, because turn this stupid sound off. If you don't take him and something goes wrong, I mean, then you just hope that your drafting gets you out of the hole that you're in. But I'm taking him like right after like the Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb tier. Like, I'm taking him right there in the Olave with Jalen Waddle territory.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely somebody I can't pass in the second round. The way I draft, I just can't pass him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just I think a good word is the wrinkles that have been thrown kind of throughout this entire draft process, this whole summer, with the twists and turns, with the running back uncertainty, has to be at least in the recent history, this has probably been the most values that you're seeing get when we look back at it in hindsight. The teams, the Saquon dips, the Josh Jacobs dips,
the Barkley dips, the Jacobs dips, the Taylor dips, the Cooper Kupp dips, the Amon-Ra St. Brown dips, like now Jalen Waddle dips. I mean, we've seen Jalen Waddle at the beginning of the summer was up in that 1-2 turn. Now he's fallen all the way to like the end of the second round in some drafts. We talk about obviously the guys that are rising from the back, the Calvin Ridleys, the James Cooks of the world, but I mean, you're just seeing a lot of movement right now. And for guys that are drafting early, guys drafting late, there's no real advantage. So, I mean, if you're somebody who thinks Cooper Kupp is going to be back earlier than normal, you got to add some drafts right now, because where he's going and what you could pair him with, the potential, that could be $1 million winner.
The injuries happen every offseason that affect ADP, but this year the injuries combined with kind of the holdout situations. I mean, just other names. You look at it, who knows what happens with Charbonnet and Piquet, but if Kenneth Walker could return crazy value as a guy who was going the second round prior to the draft, and then obviously they draft Zach Charbonnet, he drops one of your guys, Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy might only miss a week or two, and all of a sudden a guy who's going in the 4th is going in the 7th. You've seen even him touch the 8th round.
100%.
So there are so many names, and there's going to be a lot more, in some ways, unique builds with star players that we're seeing this year than in previous years, due to the situations at hand. Still no Cooper Kupp in this draft. Again, as we were saying, probably you've been seeing him in the late second pretty consistently. But as we talked about, there he goes, Kelsey and Kupp. How many
Kelsey Kupp team that 90% of the field probably isn't going to see?
Yeah. And then
certain contests. So it's hard not to, whether it's best ball, whether it's the fantasy pros, whether it's the main event, if you got some, get a couple guys together to try to, catch a little lightning in the bottle with Cooper Kupp. I mean, it just makes so much sense right now, because your difference that you're having is going to be so much different than everybody else. I mean, when you come to these last couple hundred teams that we have going on right now in the main event, you have an opportunity to get a Chase, Jefferson, and Kelsey with a Cooper Kupp, and a guy like Jerry Jeudy, like you said, 7th round, 8th round, a guy like Jonathan Taylor in the 6th round. Let's just say the perfect storm happens and they all come back when they're supposed to. I mean, think about a team like that chasing $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you look at it. Broward Bravado in the chat mentions also there was a brief Eckler dip, right, with his mini holdout. There are so many names out there. I mean, look at Josh Jacobs. He was at the 210 today. 3 weeks ago? He was going in the late 4th. So it's just kind of a maybe not late 4th, early 4th, but still, it's just kind of crazy. And we talked about Josh Jacobs, I believe, on our last show, or maybe he was one who maybe should not have fallen, as he was a guy who was always kind of on track to be back, regardless of what he said. Neither happened, but because they both literally go at the 211, 212, I was just going to it's 10 p.m. You've done 4 fantasy drafts today. I'm prepping for Vegas. We're busy, so we're just going to kind of shoot the shit on this show. But my question to you is, it didn't happen, but I was talking about that team 4, that when Kelsey and Kupp, let's say off the wall, right? Mahomes
comes back.
Or no, hear me out. Mahomes and Andrews are both there, right? There's still obviously it's so many Mahomes and Kelsey stacks. How much of a consideration would Mark Andrews have been there to get a Kelsey, Mark Andrews, and Cooper Kupp team?
The main event I did at 7:00. The team started just like that from the 3-hole.
Really?
Mark Andrews. I don't know why Mark Andrews is falling in drafts. I mean, I know he's been a little banged up.
Yeah.
But are we really worried about that? Again, we talk about some of these late drafting advantages. Kelsey, Andrews. I mean, I know the double tight end, triple tight end has really never, shown to work in, these main event and fantasy pros drafts, but to get those two and them offenses, especially with, the hopeful improvement in Baltimore with Lamar throwing the ball a ton, it's really hard to pass that up. If that's me, I'm probably taking Kelsey and Andrews. My love for Cooper Kupp is well known, and he's definitely a guy that I'm, very worried about because I'm very highly exposed with. But to get Kelsey and Andrews, and obviously have the potential to maybe Mahomes sneaks back to you, or Lamar, maybe if you want to push him up a little bit, it's really, really tempting because it's going to be different. Nobody's going to have it, and when you get like a chance, like getting through your league and maneuvering that, and then getting a chance at $1 million, to have that different scenario that could, play out is an advantage that some people don't see because they're just so used to drafted off ADP.
It's just like, as you said, there's the unique builds is something I'm going to be fascinated to follow because, and I'm sure Fantasy Mojo, follow him at Twitter. He has a great resource for FFPC ADP, but also kind of the trends and stacks and stuff along that nature. If you're playing in the FFPC, you should be following him. And I'm sure he'll be on it because, again, I'm repeating myself, but they're just the ability for unique stacks with the way some of these dips have happened. There's going to be a lot of teams out there where they're one of two. I mean, it was interesting on the Fantasy Pros. I believe it might have been a Kelsey Andrews, Mahomes start from maybe the 2 spot, and it was only the second ever in the tournament. So that was obviously even before the Kupp news, but Kupp just adds a unique mix of that as a guy who's now fallen through the second. And as you said, I think in our last maybe touch point on Kupp is that he is someone I think that's a valid position, right? Like I don't know if I would be comfortable taking him over the likes of Tony Pollard. You can't take him over Amon Ra, AJ Brown, Diggs, CD because there is that uncertainty.
Not in that spot. Like, I mean, I feel like there's obviously the risk, built in with the injury. You don't know; it's an unknown. If he doesn't go on the PUP list, it just makes it even more of like an unknown. Like if he goes on the PUP list, he'll settle somewhere. I mean, where does he? If he misses the first 4 games, where does he go? Does he slip to the 3rd? Does he get to the 4th?
Yeah, I mean, how Judy
about Vegas live drafts? Like live drafts are a different animal than especially after that Thursday game. If things go haywire, and that's a 38-35 game, or it doesn't go haywire, it's a 27-10 game. I mean, guys are going to fall, and it's going to be wild, and I'm very, very excited for it.
I'd like to think if Kupp, because that's a thing. And again, I'm not as versed on kind of the ins and outs of the PUP list, but he could still go on the PUP list right after like week 1. Like he's not out of the woods. Like this could be you're not on any track. Like let's just throw in the PUP list. So I think the other, you said it right. Let's say some news comes out. Oh yeah, because he's not playing week 1 by every report out there.
But here's the wild one. Let's say just something that you go, everything's great, and then you hear next week, oh, Cooper Kupp's practicing. Like the shockwaves through fantasy football would be just immense.
The more concerning thing is if, let's say, you get a Rappaport tweet Friday afternoon is Cooper Kupp will be out week 1, and he's looking at missing multiple weeks after that. Then where those Saturday drafts, those late night Friday, where does he drop there? Because my guess would be probably the 3-4 turn if he's guaranteed to miss 4 weeks.
So you think about like some of these 3-4 power turns. You're starting off with a Diggs and Garrett Wilson, or Diggs and St. Brown, or a Diggs and AJ Brown, or Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, any of those guys, and you got an opportunity to add Cooper Kupp, even if he's missing 4 games. You just can't pass that up. I mean, you just gotta trust your drafting to get through it. I know a lot of people are gonna. I mean, they're like I said, if you're doing one draft, maybe Cooper Kupp doesn't make sense for you. But even in the one draft scenario, you shoot for the moon. You're going for $1 million. I mean, if you're trying to win your league, it's a dangerous proposition because you have to trust your drafting. And I don't know. I like risk. And, obviously him traveling out of town. And I saw, Dave in the chat said it was a risk. It's a risk that I'm willing to take at a certain spot. I mean, the opportunity outweighs the risk.
I think beyond that, even if you didn't travel out of state, for me as a personal drafter, it's just also something. All right, so this is now your second, not severe, but I would say so. Let's say that severe hamstring strain in a span of a month. That you're coming off a pretty bad high ankle sprain.
Yeah,
obviously this is years ago, but you already have an existing. You tore your ACL once, and you're getting up there, right? It's just not something personally beyond just the traveling to Minnesota kind of only reaffirms that. But the concern is there for yes, that is probably going to be less likely to play you. It's just there's a lot with Kupp because I remember when we started these shows way back, Never Too Early Best Ball. I think we did one in February, maybe. You and me both were like, yeah, I was pretty like, I think Cooper Kupp's going to be my wide receiver 1.
I agree.
And then he slipped a bit.
I've taken him as a wide receiver 1. I've taken him number 1 overall early drafts.
And then just the injuries, though, they start adding up because at some point it's just, all right, that's 2 hamstring strains. He's at probably the highest risk of re-injury in the season.
100%.
So yeah, it's a real messy situation, but and it's the same thing that people are dealing with probably starting in round 5 with Jonathan Taylor. Do you weigh the risk of he decides to play for Indianapolis? They could maybe patch things up, or he does get moved at the October 31st deadline, and you take that risk of getting an elite back in round 6 or sometimes round 7, or there's also the chance that you just wasted a 6th or 7th round pick on a guy who's not going to play all year. Just crazy.
You know what else is crazy? 4th round, J.K. Dobbins.
RB13. Where's he? Yeah.
Wow. Big fan of J.K. Dobbins. Love the player.
I mean, he's been a name, I think, every stream because we've talked about now Kupp for a while.
He hasn't moved at all. I mean,
we've been saying we've been waiting for him to kind of get a little, like, we're like, I'm surprised this guy hasn't had a bump. Surprised this hasn't guy had a bump.
Very shocked by it, to be honest with you.
I mean, I can't hate the pick. Can I? Will I sit here? Will I sit here and say probably could have waited till the 5-7? Yes, but go get your guy, right? If this is go get your guy time, guarantee it, and I'm fine with it because this is a guy who I think will be playing in an explosive offense. You and me both bond. If he just has to stay healthy and he looked really good down the stretch last year, I'm not concerned about any contract situation. That was, I know, a concern at one point this offseason, but no, this is yeah, that's. I'm trying to see what the earliest he's gone because, again, late night drafts is where the earliest he's gone is the 5-4. So this is by almost around the earliest we've seen Dobbins.
A perfect example about the wildness of main events. George Kittle, 3-4 turn in this draft. I mean, I've seen him go this high.
Yeah.
In the main event draft I did earlier, he went in the 6th round. And you just see these drafts and how different they are. J.K. Dobbins was a 6th round pick that we took. Now he's going in the 4th round drafts. The draft that you're in is you just got to be prepared for the roller coaster of it because certain guys that you might be thinking, hey, I'm going to get J.K. Dobbins in the 5th round or the 6th round, he'll be there. And then he goes in the 4th. You just got to be able to adapt.
Yeah, Kittle's gone anywhere from the 3-11 to the 6-7 in the main event over the last couple of days. And it's just despite being kind of it's the flagship contest at the FFPC, you see the best of the best playing. There is still a wild uncertainty with it, and I think it's only enhanced this year with the question marks that so many players have. Brad Bravado, I believe it was Dave Gladstone. Yet Brad Bravado said he'd rather take on Kupp's risk than Breece Hall's, and it just goes back to we can go through this
1,000%.
list. There are so many names. And I'm sure this is me also. You and me have done so many of these streams. I've followed so many of this year's drafts. As I get older, and as you know, the memory, it starts to go. But my point is this year, and again, I'm sure if I went back in past years, I might be like, oh, maybe there is. But this year just feels like way more people starting in the earlier rounds have so much more uncertainty than in past years. So much more. Like I feel like in the past you would have like, all right, you got 3-4 rounds, you kind of know what you're getting. But this year it's like this entire 4th round almost. Every single guy I think has a legitimate concern, except like obviously anyone could get hurt.
Everybody, every single person. I mean, if you look at like, well, I'll ask you this question: your top 3 players in this league, not that you like or anything like that,
yeah,
but you feel like has the least concern.
Justin Jefferson.
I'm saying in the 4th round, not the 1st.
Oh, in the 4th round. I was about to just hit you with just some straight stars. Yeah, we'll give you some answers. But see, Hill, honestly, I don't think would be in the top 3. In this 4th round, Deontay.
I would agree.
Deontay, because I think I think the touchdowns are going to positively improve. They kind of have to. You can only go up after having 0, and that was an anomaly. Despite his injury concerns that he's had, Lamar, I think, because he's just so good, and I'm not gonna like ETN, no, Dobbins still no, Najee not a chance, Pierce no, Mixon. It's probably one of the Packers as my 3rd.
Yeah, Watson or Jones. I'll just leave Christian Watson out because obviously he'd be on my list. I would agree with your first 2, and I would say Aaron Jones is the 3rd one.
Yeah,
I think Aaron Jones is the guy that nobody has talked about in drafts. He's a guy that's all over the board. And, I mean, if he falls in the right spot, I mean, you could be getting a league winner that literally nobody is talking about. You look at some of these guys that are in the draft, like everybody gets talked about. Damian Pierce rising up draft boards.
Yeah.
Christian Watson rising
The
up.
second straight year.
J.K. Dobbins rising up draft boards. Not a soul has talked about Aaron Jones.
He's honestly dropped.
Yeah, nobody is talking about Travis Etienne. I know everybody's talking about Tank Bigsby, but nobody likes Travis Etienne. You see all these guys that continually just fly up boards, like, and you're just like, is this just a trap? We've all seen it over the season. The guys that fly up boards are usually some of the biggest traps. Obviously, there's a lot of success stories, but I mean, Calvin Ridley, he's in the second round of drafts now. I mean, yeah, I know everything looks good and everything should be good, but like, you're going to sit here and tell me you're going to take Calvin Ridley over Chris Olave that I've seen, over Jalen Waddle, over Devonta Smith. I don't think that's up for me. I mean, if I didn't get Calvin Ridley in the third and fourth when he was going, I can't push him up to the second right now.
There's
a losing proposition.
There's a weird stretch in drafts, and for our viewers who kind of watch every Sunday night, they're kind of hearing me repeat itself, so apologies to them. But there's a weird stretch where, as we've talked about openly, 6th, 7th, 8th round, we love the values. There's a weird stretch in a lot of drafts from like the mid-third to kind of the late 5th, where I hate pretty much every pick. Like, I'm just like, I hate clicking the button because then it's the risk involved.
You want to push your guys up because like you just like, you're looking at drafts, you're just like, do I really like Joe Mixon? Like, I took Joe Mixon in a main, my first main, with a friend of mine, and I wanted nothing to do with Joe Mixon, but I haven't seen Joe Mixon. You have Mojo up?
I have Mojo up. Yep.
Where is the latest that Joe Mixon's gone in the main event?
The latest in the last 2 days. Mixon, the latest is the 4.7. The earliest is the 2.8.
So we got him at the 5.3, which was like 5 weeks or 5 days ago, I think it was. On Wednesday, I think it was the 30th.
Yeah.
I didn't want him, but at that spot, it just made too much sense to pass up.
And there's something you said, it's just kind of like confirmation bias. Some of those names in that 6th, 7th, 8th round, you just feel like, oh, I'm getting great value. I love this guy, his upside. Well, in these 4th, 5th, you're getting a lot of guys with maybe some lower floors, or they're aging, or they have legitimate concerns. But there's also kind of a relative outcome for them to be, they were undervalued. Like, it's going to happen because it has to, just with the number of names being drafted. We're going to look back, and you and me next year will be on, we were probably lower on Joe Mixon than we should have been, right? And I will have no qualms, and I'm sure you're the same. You are comfortably out on Joe Mixon, as am I. But I think we both also talked about there is an outcome, right? Just the offense he plays in and the fact that he's the only guy there. He very well could finish as a top 12 running back this year.
We talked about Alexander Mattison, two guys that don't really have that much of, in all honesty. But if they're there at the right spot with what is behind them and what is perceived to be 3 down guys, they're hard to pass up at the right spot if you're building a team a certain way. You start off 4 receivers and Alexander Mattison's there. It's, compared to some of these other guys, like, to me, Alexander Mattison, Javonte Williams is a perfect example. I mean, at the end of the day, we pretty much know where I'm going to go, which is Alexander Mattison. I mean, Javonte Williams has plenty of upside, and I get all that. Still don't trust it that he's going to be 100% healthy the whole season. So, 2 guys I don't draft, but 1v1, with a build like Team 11, who's done very well so far, I'm taking Mattison.
Noah giving some love to Team 11 in the chat. I'm going to give some love to Team 11. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I think I'm going to be, they're having a draft. I'm a buyer of Mattison, I think. I know Minnesota doesn't use their running backs a lot. I know he's been beat up, but there's, again, you kind of look at it, for all we talk about some of these other guys, there's really no competition for Mattison, in my opinion, right? From what I've read, Ty Chandler obviously took the number 2 job. Dwayne McBride is cut. Ty Chandler's looked okay, but I don't know if I'm really worried about Ty Chandler, because sometimes the eye test for me, again, Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell, they're heavy pass catching. But I saw Mattison when Dalvin was out for the last couple of years, as I had a lot of Dalvin shares the last 2 years. And this is a guy, Mattison, right, who he was, again, it's a limited games here and there. It's not for an entire workload, which is a reasonable concern. But Mattison is a guy who looked like an elite back in that Minnesota offense. At times looked more explosive and a better runner than Dalvin did. So I think I'm buying him. And he's my one guy. Someone asked me, who are some of these fantasy players maybe, in your opinion, most overthinking? I think Mattison might be that guy for me, that people are kind of overthinking.
You got to ask me that question, it'll probably be the same answer. I mean, again, it's too late in the game. I'm trying to add him where I can add him, but where he's getting drafted right now, it's kind of late in the game because most there's always going to be somebody who likes him better, who's going to push him up based off the structure of their team and just whatever the situation is. But man, Jahan Dotson's another name. It just keeps moving up. Like
the Terry injury accelerated.
And then he's obviously had a good preseason. Has a connection with Sam Howell.
I mean, Mattison's another one, by the way. Not as much main event. I believe Dalvin had already been cut when it opened, but Fantasy Pros, if we're looking at the Fantasy Pros Championship, which, by the way, get in the Fantasy Pros, it's Draftathon weekend, $350 to enter. For every filled draft, $50 is donated to the American Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Drafts have been popping off all weekend. But in the Fantasy Pros, it has been moving. And hey, I'll just completely honest, right? If you're trying to get in some more, the return on income, right? It's on pace.
People love the word overlay. It looks like,
Yeah, no. It's on track, I believe. 80, 85, I forget, somewhere in the 85%. So you're getting a good investment. Obviously, it's still there's a lot of teams left. There's what now? 6 days left to draft. But you if you're trying to get in some more, now would be the time. With, as you said, that word overlay, that word that everyone loves floating around. But in that Fantasy Pros contest, which opened all the way back up in March, Alexander Mattison opened that in like the 9th, 10th round. And this is with rumors of Dalvin being cut swirling. And then there was a brief thing, oh, maybe he does stay. But still, even with all those rumors that Dalvin's probably a likely cut candidate, Mattison was still 8, 9, 10 in the ADP. And now he's obviously going in the 5th. So you're looking at some of those teams that have Mattison super late. Some really great values. But again, who's a receiver, though, for you? You said Mattison, but maybe who's a receiver that you think fantasy players are most overthinking this draft process? I know that's a loaded question. So
it might be Chris Godwin. I mean, Chris Godwin's a guy, another name that just really nobody really loves. Nobody's really talking about. Everybody hates Baker. Everybody just thinks the team's going to be bad. They're going to run the ball a ton, and it's going to be just ugly football.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get targets. You saw the preseason game. I mean, they pretty much just peppered him. So, I mean, he's a guy that makes a lot of sense, where he's being drafted. He fluctuates between the 5th, the 6th. I've seen him a little higher, not often, but it's got to be him. If not, maybe Debo. Debo's a guy that another
that's
name
a good answer.
Isn't being talked about. Like, he's kind of stuck in that ugly 3rd round that people like, who do I really like? Do I want to take one of the big quarterbacks, or do I take, one of the Stevensons, Josh Jacobs of the world, Jahmyr Gibbs? Or am I going to take all these receivers that look the same? The Keenan Allens, the Higgins, the Samuels, the DK Metcalfs of the world, the Amari Coopers. It's a weird area where everybody kind of looks the same. And if you get it right, you could be sitting with just, we talked about. Ramondre Stevenson, where he's being drafted right now, is absolutely mind-blowing to me. I am not worried about Zeke. You should not be worried about Zeke. Ramondre Stevenson should be going at the end of the 2nd round. They have no other running backs on the roster. Yeah, I know Bill Belichick. I get that. But are we really worried that Zeke's going to be – and if anything, Zeke taking a couple carries away from Stevenson is not a bad thing. It's not as bad as people make it out to be.
I think there's something that you said is
criminally insane.
Ramondre wasn't good in the red zone last year. It was maybe his one flaw, and he wasn't great at converting goal line chances. So theoretically, if Zeke were to take that away, it's not great, but it's also not something you're losing, right? It's not I think what the more concern is Bill O'Brien's a legitimate offensive coordinator, and that offense could be better, leading to less just checkdowns for Ramondre.
That's definitely
the real concern I have. Not as you said.
I look
not
at like that offense, and that offense is not very good. He's their best offensive player by a landslide, and they're in a division where they're gonna have to score. And if they're getting behind in games, which they should be because they're clearly the worst team in that division, Ramondre Stevenson is going to be in there on passing downs. Ezekiel Elliott is not going to be in there. Mm-hmm. So I think Stevenson, we got him in our main event at the 311 today. And to me, that's just criminal compared to some of the other guys that are getting drafted above him.
If I'm giving you just a couple of names for a guy who's gotten a ton of buzz, though, I still do think people are overthinking Deontay Johnson. Because simply put, if you just even add like 4 or 5 touchdowns to his year last year, which obviously you can't do, it is something to consider. But if you just had 4 touchdowns, even 5, I think he's getting comfortably drafted in like the mid to early 3rd. And you can get him kind of at that 4 or 5 turn. And then the 2 rookies that I've been open about my love for, but Zay Flowers and Jackson Smith and Jigba's a real one. I think people are overthinking and kind of the concerns there. And just full steam ahead on both of those. Jonathan Taylor does go at the 6'10 today. Maybe we talked about it a bit, but let's talk about him kind of in more detail. Terp, you haven't been on since the news broke. Tuesday, we learned he's not getting traded. He's going to start on the pup. Similar questions that I asked you about Kupp. Where are you comfortable taking him? What are your reactions to kind of seeing him? I can get you the exact ADP up here, but can you just start me off? Where are you taking Jonathan Taylor if you're drafting, and when is the risk worth it for you?
I put out a tweet a couple weeks ago. Kadarius Toney. We'll talk about momentarily, but
a guy who's going to
he beats me. I can live with myself. The same answer will go for Jonathan Taylor. Is there a number that I'll take him at? Yeah, probably maybe 8th, which he won't fall. 7th, maybe, but I can't push him up. I mean, there's just what's the certainty of Jonathan Taylor? You don't know he's going to play football. You don't know he's going to even be on the team. He could get suspended. He could sit out the season. You could just be sitting with a total landmine. So to me, I'll take these other guys that are more of a secure DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Cam Akers, Rashad White, guys, David Montgomery, guys like that over Jonathan Taylor. As crazy it sounds right now, 4 games in a FFPC regular season is too much, with no guarantee that week 5 he's ready to go. He could have ankle injuries. He could have, a stuffy nose, an earache. We don't know. He's clearly not happy. They clearly tried to trade him and it didn't work. And if they try to trade him after week 4, what's his value really going to be?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, no team's going to be like jumping to get him unless they're desperate, but I don't think that's going to happen. So it's definitely an interesting proposition, but one I'm probably staying away from.
Just wanted to respond. A couple of good points in the chat is Joanna saying Ramondre didn't have that many opportunities in the red zone, so it's a small sample size trap. But I think my reading into that, I think it just kind of reaffirms to me, though, if he didn't have a ton last year,
also had Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator.
But people using, Zeke's going to steal the red zone, and you can go back. He wasn't efficient, and as Joanna mentions, he also didn't have a ton. So it's like it's not changing. Yeah, well, there's also that. And then Brad Bravado says, take away Steven's receptions. His numbers are not good. And I push back on that because I'm guilty of this. I've literally done this on this show. It's so easy to say, if you take this away from a player, but being a great receiving option out of the backfield and great set of hands, and also a offense that is prone to just checking down to him, you can't just take those away, because that's literally the reason why he is so high, is because he's going to have assuming a lot of chances to catch the ball out of the backfield. That's the critical component.
Is Ty Montgomery cut. Pierre Strong traded. Kevin Harris no longer on the team. They have 2 running backs, Stevenson and Zeke. And if you really believe in Zeke, why aren't you drafting him higher? Because
I will say I'm concerned about Bill. I'm a big Bill.
1,000%.
I love Bill. I love Bill Belichick. I'm a Brady hater. I've been open about that. I've been it was Bill guy, and I think Bill's an elite defensive mind. But in recent years, it does realize some of his decision making, specifically offensively, is just, what are we doing? And I could 100% see him just running Zeke out there just because he trusts Zeke's in pass blocking or some crap like that.
I trust Bill O'Brien 1,000,000% over Bill Belichick. To me, Bill Belichick's being exposed. Is he a good coach? Yes. Is people saying he's the greatest of all time? That's been as exposed as not true. Tom Brady carried them. Everybody knows that. You can't debate it anymore. It's Brady.
He didn't carry him. Bill Belichick was equally as important.
He built a good defense. Tom Brady's the reason they won.
Dude, Brady's won so many Super Bowls where his team scored like 16 points. How's that Brady?
How many games they scored to get there?
I'm not denying that, but you can't tell me when Brady won those Super Bowls when he beat the Rams 13-3. That was an awful Super Bowl. That was my freshman year of college.
Because everybody expected it to be like up and back, up and back, and it was just awful.
I vividly remember it was genuinely third quarter, and the conversation, because freshman year we're in the dorms, was, is one of these punters going to win MVP? And not sarcastically, because at that point, no one had done anything to warrant MVP of the game. It was just I think the punter, it was 3-0. It's the punters are just exceptional right now. I think Edelman won that year, right? He had 11 catches for 130 in the end. Yeah, what an awful Super Bowl.
Awful.
Awful. But no, that Bill is the concern with Zeke, and I could see it happening. But there's also something to say is Bill had full trust in Ramondre last year, especially after Damien Harris goes hurt, and then Damien Harris comes back, and it was still the Ramondre show, which I think is a positive sign.
I agree.
Oh, look at Team 9, Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers.
That's got to get you excited.
I'm a fan of this team.
James
I'm surprised Damian Pierce is being pushed up as much as he has. Because again,
It's
I don't think
definitely a weird
anything's
one because like I know
nothing's changed, right? Am I wrong? Like,
everybody
what's
is
changed?
locked into, well, he played every snap in the preseason. That's fair. That's a fair take to have, and I get all that, but like we sit there and we're basing this off what? Like they're still not a good football team. And we could easily see Devin Singletary getting work week 1, and you would have no, you wouldn't say it's crazy. Damian Pierce got pushed up last year. Yeah, he had a good run, but he wasn't a league winner in any way.
I mean, he was bad down the stretch. I don't blame him.
I like Damian Pierce. I will draft Damian Pierce, but you're telling me he's a 4th round pick. Not when people got him in the 7th round, 8th round, early on. I'm out there.
There's always those weird names, and it just, to me, he's been going at the 412 the last 2 days. And I think you mentioned the real reason is probably his preseason usage. But to me, I was never really worried about Devin Singletary. We saw him handle a huge workload last year. They like him. He's a good runner, right? He is a monster between the tackles. But to me, and I'm repeating myself, but nothing has changed too much in my mind surrounding his situation to necessitate this, what essentially has been about a 2-round bump in the last month. And the other ones make sense to me. Like when you see some of these bumps, I get it. I understand the Ridley love.
Makes sense.
He's the big one. But
Jahmyr
Pierce,
Gibbs.
to me, the Jahmyr Gibbs is up.
Yeah.
But Dameon Pierce, I'm just 4th round. I'm just like, dang. Like, I thought he was someone who was kind of destined to be in that late 5th, early 6th. That's just where his ADP had been for so long. And then again, it's just a little bit of preseason usage, which doesn't kind of change what we saw from him last year. Like we maybe was expecting that. I don't know. That's just me, though. That's just a ramp out. But I just want to shout out Team 9. Cut off right now. I'll minimize the board here in a sec. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chubb, Waller, Pierce, Cook, Kirk, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, and Zay Flowers. I like that start.
Love that start.
The Christian Kirk buzz, we can maybe talk about him, a guy we haven't talked a lot about a lot, and except when we're referencing at times we've had people on who said, oh, the gap between Christian Kirk and Ridley should be closer.
I was one of them.
The Kirk, talk about preseason usage, that's been weird. Kirk's preseason usage was interesting to the note, I'll say that. With Zay Jones was getting a little more of the snaps than him.
Very, very interesting. I mean, but you got to take what you see in the preseason with a guy like Christian Kirk, who last year showed it on the field. I know Calvin Ridley wasn't there. I know not many people know who Zay Jones was, but what does he need to show in the preseason? He is a guy that nobody's talked about. And I feel like that's a mistake because, yeah, Calvin Ridley's the hot name and the sexy pick and all that stuff. But Christian Kirk last year was a league winner when he was getting drafted. Just an absolute monster. What's up, Craig? Just want to say hello. Hope you're doing well. But back to Christian Kirk. It's definitely like it's one of those guys like we talk about, like just you don't hear their name at all. Everybody talks about Ridley. Nobody talks about Kirk. And preseason usage is definitely something that has people worried. It doesn't have me worried.
Yeah, it's just he's one of those where it's something to note, but I just can't help he was great for them last year. Like nothing has changed, right? And I know they signed Ridley, which hurts Kirk, but again, he's not seeing the number one. And if we believe in that offense, like I know you and myself do, I think opportunities should be galore. I still like Evan Ingram as well. Kind of in that, if you're talking about maybe the dead zone tight end range, I think he's the guy I'm most targeting. He seems to really have blossomed there in Jacksonville.
Tight end's definitely a tough position right now. You talk about Evan Ingram, that's a good topic. I mean, tight ends are definitely a tough position because you miss out on that first, 6 or 7 guys.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck in that dead zone of Evan Ingram, Freiermuth, Njoku. Kincaid's moved into that zone. Laporta's moved up. Guys like that you could get a little bit of a value early. You're having to make a decision on them in an uncomfortable spot, like Kincaid versus Zay Flowers, Kincaid versus Cortland Sutton, Kincaid versus Brandon Cooks. It's not a slam dunk, especially if you don't have a tight end. But you get a little desperate that you push them up because after those guys, there's a couple guys like the Dalton Schultzes of the world, Juwan Johnson, but then it gets real dark at tight end. I mean, do you really want to go into week 1 starting Gerald Everett or Cole Kmet? And probably not. Hayden Hurst. I mean, you're talking about some dark names.
There's such a specific grouping of tiers, and it goes from the elite guys that you really want. And then there's kind of that break where you're feeling, I don't feel great about that any guys. And then there's like the range of like roughly about when Kincaid starts, the fun upside sleepers. And then it drops off really quickly to names that are just like, ooh, regardless. I know, again, I always bring it back. Bradley Stalder, he did put me kind of on Hunter Henry, but still, you're not feeling good about Hunter Henry as your starting tight end. I just wanted to bring up, though, because Terp, we talk about so many names. We've done this year, I believe it's going to end up being like something like 34 live streams across kind of all the things. We talked about so many names. We did. I don't think we've mentioned Pat Freiermuth's name on any of them.
Nope.
I think we have pretty much mentioned every player for sure in the top 10 rounds, except maybe him. I don't think we've mentioned him once. Does that mean he is maybe the least sexy pick in all of fantasy football right now?
No, he's not. I mean, he's a good fantasy pick in drafts. It just comes down to, I mean, the way I've been drafting this year is either push tight end up or just punt it. And Freiermuth is just not fitting the.
He's not in that range
because we talk about some of the guys he's going around. JSN, I'll take him. Gabe Davis, I'll take him. Jordan Addison, Jerry Jeudy, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, James Conner, all of those guys I'll take over Freiermuth. And I'm not saying Freiermuth is a bad target because I love Kenny Pickett this year. I love that offense. I think that offense is going to take the next step and can easily, warrant Deontay Johnson and one of the George Pickens, Freiermuth guy. I think it's going to be Pickens, but I just don't know if there's enough balls for 3 guys there. But still, if you miss out on tight end and Freiermuth is there, I think 7th is a little rich for me. But if you move him down a round or so, it makes a little bit more sense. But like you said, he's just not a sexy name. That doesn't mean he's a bad name. It really just comes down to, in a tight end premium format like the Fantasy Pros and the Main Event obviously are. Is there a difference between Pat Freiermuth and Juwan Johnson? For most, there might be. To me, there's not much.
Freiermuth to me kind of seems as though the ceiling is a little bit low, but the floor is also pretty high.
That's fair.
Like he's just a very safe pick, and that's kind of his ADP reflects that. It's just surprising me kind of because I'm looking at Ingram, we just talked about, and I'm looking at Freiermuth, and I'm like, we have not mentioned him, even though we've had many discussions about how we were intrigued and buying into that Steelers offense. And we haven't mentioned Freiermuth once as kind of a target. And he, again, the guy who caught a touchdown in the preseason. Like he's had the signs there. He's stayed steady in that tight end 7 to 10 range pretty much the entirety of the draft process. But yeah, just I wanted to mention him. Let's try and talk about every player. Another guy, Jeff Wilson. Another weird situation. No one even knew he was hurt, and now it's like he's going to miss the season. It's on the lower end.
The season, like, what did that quote mean? Like, he got finger problems? Like, what the heck does that mean?
Like, we wouldn't be surprised if he comes back this year. Like, what? Wait, so you're saying there's a chance he doesn't come back this year? Like, it's just so confusing. I don't know. But my question to you, beyond just your analysis of those cryptic comments, Raheem Mostert is probably going to have a nice week 1 and then get hurt week 2, right? That's what we're and then
that's
is it
what the
A-chain
setup
time?
is. I mean,
what are we looking at?
It's set up that it's set up like that to where he's getting overdrafted. Everybody's like, "Wow, I can get a week or 2 out of him."
He's going to be the starter.
Oh, he's going to be a great starter. You just hope you don't play the Raheem Mostert team, first couple of weeks, because the chances of him being there at the end aren't probably good, based off his history. But to me, give me more Devin A-chain bags. He should be back in the practice. He should be ramping it up, getting ready for next week. Maybe he doesn't have a big week 1 role, but I mean, if there's no Jeff Wilson and it's Mostert versus A-chain, give me A-chain. I mean, I know he's a smaller back, and I know all the questions surrounding him, but he's still going too late in drafts, in my opinion.
You don't want to hear this, but the most likely outcome out of all this is Salvin Ahmed leads the Dolphins running backs in fantasy points this
It's
year.
surely possible, or an ad like Kareem Hunt or Lenny Fournette, which I'm still shocked doesn't have a job right now.
Not for
That's
the
all
Dolphins, though.
Yeah.
I agreed, but it's there's people making the points is those two guys, the Dolphins, have no need in their speed-based
No,
system. None. But
none.
that's why Mostert until he gets hurt, and then you just hope Achane can stay healthy. And it sounds really awful saying that. It's just a fact that Mostert, we kind of see it every single year. He starts off usually pretty hot, or he has opportunities, and then he gets hurt. Then he'll hopefully, if it's not too serious, he'll probably bounce around. And I think he's going to have one of those weird weeks where weeks 1 and 2, Mostert's good, and then he gets hurt, and then he'll be back out of nowhere for week 9. And it's going to be an unpredictable, unless they get like a Jonathan Taylor. The more and more this offseason kind of drags on. In some ways, if Wilson is out, at least there's only trying to more than likely 2 to decipher from. But I think it's just going to be an unpredictable backfield all year. Quentin Johnson in the 10th round, guy who had the bump and then has dropped back down to earth.
Literally is just crashing. He went in the 11th of my main event, and I'm just like,
whew, yeah,
it's hard. Like
the drops emerged.
Yeah,
People love the videos that like the Charger social media team was posting on Twitter, and then the preseason games hit. And while he has some moments, you also see this guy has not solved the drops issues that we saw in college, which is kind of why I was off of him in the pre-draft process for the actual NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
Feels a little bit low because again, one injury away from Mike Williams or Keenan Allen.
Look at him right next to Marvin Mims. You're talking about a riser, Marvin Mims, who was
Herbert team too.
Yeah,
a nice little 10th round might as well. You can swing.
Why not? Like
Everett late.
It makes so much sense, like to build a team a little different where you start a little running back heavy. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're taking a shot on an unknown. You're hearing all the rumors that Josh Palmer is going to be the 3rd guy early this season, which is possible, but they didn't move up to get this guy if he's not going to get opportunities, especially on a team that's going to be chucking the ball a ton. He has ability, but the drops are going to be the issue. And on a team that needs to win now, there's no pause button with the Chargers anymore. They just paid Herbert. They need to win now, and they're not going to be playing around with a rookie who can't catch the ball unless there's an injury, which we all know with those two, Allen and Williams, is a possibility.
I mean, not to bring up bad memories, but it has to hurt a bit. I remember doing some of these. I'm pretty sure it was best ball, and you were taking Quentin Johnson to stack with Herbert in like the 7th round because that's where he was going.
Early on, I think I have him in. I think me and Brad had him at the 8th round. With Herbert, and I think I drafted him myself in the 7th round once. That's what I'm saying. Like we look at like the ebbs and flows of these drafts, and when we drafted them, and like everybody can sit there and go, well, man, look at the value I'm getting in drafts now. But it's kind of like the boards are trying to settle right now. The boards are like not boring, but like you have the Cooper Kupp stuff, you have the Jonathan Taylor stuff, you have these guys rising up and some of these guys falling. Yeah. So it's making things a little different. But like so many players that are getting drafted in certain spots right now were nowhere near those spots, good and bad, a month ago. So, I mean, each draft's different, but at the end of the day, you draft the right players, you're going to win a lot of money. You just got to hope that the overall structure of your team is just gets you to the dance, and then you just need luck on your side.
I was fine taking Quentin Johnson my last point. I'm in the 8th round, 7th round. You guys did. I'm even more fine now because now it feels as though you're in the 10th round. You can cut bait.
It's in a little dead zone at receiver, like
Sky Moore and Quentin Johnson there for team.
It's exceptional.
Team 7.
Michael Pittman, who not in love with Michael Pittman at all this year. Anthony Richardson questions are out there in full force, but it makes some sense to get a guy who's going to be the number 1 receiver by a good margin in that offense. And hopefully Anthony Richardson figures out a couple times a game, gets Pittman the ball, and Pittman can do something. I don't like the upside of the pick personally. I know a lot of people are like Pittman this year, but I just think Richardson's going to do a lot of damage on the ground. He's going to have some games, but in a managed league, Michael Pittman's a tough start every week.
I'm actually okay with it though, in relative to Bill, because every other receiver he has is kind of massive upside receivers.
100%.
Obviously Waddle, and then you have Dotson, Moore, and Quentin Johnson kind of shooting for the moon, and then Pittman I think is fine relative to this build, kind of taking maybe a guy with again, we talked about move. He has kind of back to about low ceilings but high floors as well.
Here's a question in the chat just came through from Kyle.
Please.
What's the wildest thing that could happen in the Thursday night game to completely break Friday main event drafts?
Amon-Ra. So I golf 5 touchdowns. I don't think it will push him up. The craziest thing would be Amon-Ra's healthy and goes for it's. Oh, there's a lot actually. I'm trying to. So off the top of my head,
you can go team by team. Go to we'll start with the Lions.
Amon-Ra. If Amon-Ra goes,
exactly what Kyle says, Jared Goff will move up in the Herbert Jackson range, Burrow range.
No,
1,000%.
I will guarantee you. First off, Goff isn't throwing for 5 touchdowns. If he does, though, because
if he puts up 30 fantasy points,
he's had big games.
He will go in the top 5 rounds.
No. He's what, like 11th?
I'll bet you a spin on the roulette wheel. Your favorite number. That's facts.
33. 33 or 9. What are your numbers?
20 and 8.
You know, my friend, North Carolina fan like you, says
smart guy.
Says his number is 23 because he never misses.
That's fair. I like that. I play 23 when I play. But, I mean, I don't see there being any way that if Goff puts up 30 that he doesn't go in the – I mean, people love –
I just kind of go back to – dude, I mean, Joanna's saying now Laporta. There's obviously an outcome, but in terms of I'm giving one, the wildest thing that would break the board. If Amon-Ra, let's say, has a 12 for 140 and like 3 touchdowns, he's probably a top 2 pick.
If Amon goes for 25 plus, he's a top 3 pick.
So he's going like he's consistently like 1.8, 1.9, 1.10. So it's obviously not the biggest jump, but he would go in the top 2-3 picks easily. So I don't know if that's considered breaking the board, but that's like the most.
Jahmyr Gibbs with 30 goes top 8 picks.
Gibbs. I mean, Laporta is a good shout. If Laporta is really involved and he has like an 100-yard game and even a touchdown, I think you're looking at kind of he pushes like the Goddard, Pitts, Kittle.
People
could you imagine Kadarius Toney? What if Kadarius Toney goes 115 and 1 on like 8 catches?
I would just dream. It would be my dream, to be honest with you, for that to happen.
He would get moved up. Well, what's your answer then?
This is tough. My answer. Jahmyr Gibbs is my answer.
So in terms of
breaks up 30, he goes in the first round of drafts, in the top half of the first round.
Because Amon-Ra, for me, I don't know if I can classify him moving into top 3 as like breaking the board because he's already a first round pick. I disagree with you. Watson in the 11th. I guess quarterbacks have just honestly, I respect this room. The quarterbacks just kind of, I was about to say crazy, but there was just 3 straight rounds from 8 to 10 with no quarterbacks drafted.
I mean, think about it. Like, it's been a different world this year with quarterbacks because, like, you've seen some drafts, like the main event I did last Wednesday was just
the main event you did last Wednesday, which you sent me,
7 quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds.
Nuts.
Oh man, and I regret it because we took Fields, and I'm just like, I don't regret Fields, but it was just like it was just a weird like draft, and like you see a draft like this where it's like, I mean, I'm loving my team if I'm team 4 right now with 11th round Deshaun Watson. When all these other guys, like, you know, took guys in the top 7th round. I mean, this would be a dream draft of mine based off the way I like to structure teams and the quarterbacks that I want. I would love a draft like this. Quarterbacks is going exactly where they should.
A little bit of a throwback draft. You kind of have the early quarterbacks, which is a little more of obviously kind of the recent trend. But then since that 5th round, it's been about what it used to be, really. People wait on quarterbacks. This has to be a downside of doing all these live draft coverages, Terp. You see so many drafts, you're like, man, if I was just in this.
Why not just put the 10 o'clock one instead of 7 o'clock? Well, the 7 o'clock one went really well, but
good team.
The 10 o'clock one, I mean, just sitting here, I'm just looking at the quarterback position, forget anything else. Quarterback position, I mean, this is an outlier compared to how quarterbacks have been getting drafted this year.
I mean, you had a weird one. Again, I won't say much about your drafts. Obviously, keep that information private. But Anthony Richardson in the 14th round in your main event earlier today. Crazy.
And I was sitting there with my dad, and we were talking it over, and I'm just like, Anthony Richardson in the 4th round or Russell Wilson. And I love Russell Wilson this year, but, you know, we had Lamar Jackson at the time, and it was just like, I mean, Anthony Richardson is not a guy that we're ever going to play, but if something happens to Lamar Jackson, which we knock on wood hope never does, I'll take the upside of Richardson with the rushing ability and down the stretch potential once he figures out the, you know, ebbs and flows of the early season, you know, as an upside play. 14th round, though, that's insanity.
I will say, though, let's answer. I'm realizing, though, we never actually gave our official answers. You did. So you're saying Jahmyr Gibbs is yours. I'm going to say I'll give the Chiefs answer. Not a specific name, but if Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, if one of them has a unreal stat line, I think they get pushed up a ton because I think people will feel confident like, oh, there is a Chiefs go-to receiver. So I'm going to say Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, I think could have the explosive Thursday game that would most break the board.
You have all those guys. You have Justin Ross. You have Richie James. You have.
But Tony and
MVS.
Sky Moore have to be the most. MVS, I don't think changes that much. Like he doesn't break it if he goes off because where everyone is always expecting MVS to have 2 games a year where he has like 102, and those are the only 2 startable games that you can never predict them.
We'll say it again, and I want to make sure I get this. This is something I reminded myself. Actually, just popped up on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Thursday game if you're an FFPC player, Fantasy Pros player. It's a free look.
I have my email scheduled to go out to our entire mailing audience.
If you drafted Josh Reynolds or Marvin Jones in the 20th round of your draft, get their butts in the lineup because if they do well, you can use those points. But also, if they stink, you just pull them out and you send them back to the waiver wire.
They are unlocked. Essentially, is the word that entire weekend because of the reason why. If you play in the best ball tournament, obviously, which is not concerning. That's obviously not, or any leagues, standalone leagues, dynasty or satellite leagues that have drafted before the Thursday game, you do not have it. The only free looks are after that for obviously the Fantasy Pros Championship, the main event, and then certain leagues which draft after the Thursday game. But yeah, as we said, those players for the main event and Fantasy Pros will focus on. If you have Thursday players, they are unlocked for the weekend by a product of for fairness. Because we have drafts going on after the Thursday game. It's again a Thursday free look for those Thursday players. Quarterback run is happening, but yeah, I wanted to go back to Kyle's comment, not the great question, which was what can most break the board. Terp says a Jahmyr Gibbs explosion. I say a Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney blowing up, but he also mentioned Juwan Johnson as a name he loves. I think he is. And I know you have a couple, but of all the tight ends, if I'm passing on obviously that elite tier, and then you're kind of missing not the dead zone, but that Muth, Ingram, kind of Kincaid and Njoku run, I think Juwan Johnson is the name I'm most targeting in the double-digit rounds at tight end.
Juwan Johnson, I 100% agree with. Tyler Higbee and Dalton Schultz. All 3 of them are guys that if I'm missing out on that, Freiermuth, Ingram, Kincaid, Njoku, range that is a little. It's not the sexiest to look at. I like Kincaid probably out of the bunch, more than the rest. I'm going after Schultz. I feel like he could be the top target, for Houston with the rookie quarterback. Higbee makes a ton of sense now. I mean, he could just be getting peppered with targets with the, him and Stafford. We heard the rumors of Stafford not getting along with the young guys and not being able to figure it out. That's just weird.
Well, not getting along. He can't get along with them.
He doesn't understand the mojo. He doesn't the mojo. All that yippity yaps all talk. He needs Cooper Kupp. We know that. But if he doesn't have Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee's a guy that should get peppered with targets. Juwan Johnson's still my favorite. He's a guy that I targeted a ton. Early, he was pretty much free in drafts. Added him a bunch. Lately, I mean, he's a guy that I love it a lot. Sam Laporta, behind ASB, St. Brown right now. Laporta's the second option. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs, but non-running back. Is it Marvin Jones or Josh Reynolds? I don't think so. I think Laporta's going to be the guy. So, those 4 guys are guys I would target a ton. And if I missed out on the top elite tight ends, the Wallers, the Hawkinsons, the obviously Andrews and Kelseys, Kittles, Goddards, Pitts, that range, I probably fall all the way down to those 4 rather than the 4 guys that are above them that you can get 2-3 rounds later. Freiermuth, Juwan Johnson, 4-round difference. I'll take Juwan Johnson.
Another note on kind of Kupp's injury and the status. Van Jefferson is up to the 1201, a guy who was getting drafted super late in drafts. I think there was some where there's probably some drafts out there where he wasn't drafted.
My thing with Van Jefferson, and we all know Van Jefferson's a very average football player.
Sure.
If you take, I don't know the top half of that round is, but I'm pretty sure the 2 receivers started. They started Lamb, Adams, I'm pretty sure.
Let me go look for you.
Even with Cooper Kupp being out. Yes. Even with Cooper Kupp being out. Are you going to start Van Jefferson over Michael Thomas week 1?
Probably not.
So when's Van Jefferson ever going to see your lineup? In a best ball, it makes sense.
Sure.
In a managed league, like
I don't mind it because if Kupp does miss it, there is still, I think, Kupp isn't, as we said at the start, is not out of the woods. I think there is a
Oh no.
avenue in which he misses a lot of time where it's fine kind of storing Van Jefferson and just seeing if Kupp misses extended time. Someone's going to have to catch passes. You said they're going to be bad. They're going to be down. And as you said, there is at least some existing repertoire between Stafford and Van Jefferson. Although I do think, as you said, Higbee probably just going to get peppered with the Rams are going to be bad. The Rams are going to be really bad.
There's a lot of bad football teams right now. I mean, the Rams, and there's 2 in that division. I mean, if Seattle or San Francisco don't win that division, the NFL, and they should literally just be Kyle Shanahan fired, Pete Carroll fired, because the Rams and the freaking Cardinals are atrocious. Like, I want Cooper Kupp to be back. Number one, I have a lot of them. I know a lot of people that, I'm very close with, have a ton of them, so we all want him back. The main reason I want him back because I don't want that team being 0-4 and like Kupp, like, oh yeah, I'm ready to come back. Well, let me wait a couple more weeks, and then get to the point where it's like, a wasted season on a guy. That's my worry with Cooper Kupp. He misses a game or two. Maybe they just get lucky and play I don't know their schedule off the top of my hand, but play the Cardinals or play somebody at home early. But I don't want, like we talked about the Cardinals a bunch. Kyler Murray is not playing football this year. I'm going to go on record right now, the last main event thing, and say Kyler Murray doesn't play a game this year. Well, why would he? Like, what if you're Kyler Murray? What would you go out there for?
First 5 weeks of the season, by the way, Rams play Seahawks, Niners, Bengals, Colts, Eagles. That's maybe a 1-4 start.
Where's the one? The Colts?
Yeah. I think the Colts are the Seahawks. There's always a weird thing. Maybe the Rams beat the Seahawks week one. I think there's one in there. That's a 1-4 start, even with Cooper Kupp.
I don't know, man.
Worth it. They won the Super Bowl.
Question in the chat. Mike Evans demanding a new contract. Don't care. Haven't drafted much Mike Evans. If he does, you don't want a guy you want to look at? Trey Palmer. He's a guy that, with the Russell Gage injury, stepped up in the preseason. But that just makes Chris Godwin even more valuable,
Yeah, that just seems like his last year. He's probably the thing about Mike Evans that's almost maybe a little interesting. I talked about it with Balgy on Tuesday on our Fantasy Pros live coverage. Go look at that. And that was from a couple of days ago. But it's the NFL trade deadline has changed. Like people get moved, big names get moved. Mike Evans, I think, is leaning of probably I want to say likely.
Mike Evans, Marquise Brown. 2
guys who I think are going, my personal opinion, are like Mike Evans is, I think, going to be moved. Buccaneers are not going to be good. By all accounts, it doesn't seem as though he's re-signing. Why wouldn't a contender try and trade for him? That's something that I
Where's a good spot for Mike Evans?
I mean, there's a lot of good spots.
Everybody's going to say Kansas City. We'll just eliminate them. That's what everybody was.
Like a legit. I don't. The issue is, again, I don't know like the cap situation of teams enough to kind of fully comprehend like maybe where he could be a best fit for. But
Giants make a ton of sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't thought that far. I just think he's going to get moved, and you would expect him to get moved to a team that would kind of be in contention and needs kind of that pass.
Another good one, the Jets.
Yeah, I was thinking New York. I could totally see that. Yeah. I could actually see Mike Evans to the Jets. Like, dude, I don't know. You mentioned like if the Chargers are going for it, Quentin Johnson is in their injuries. Could he
There's an injury to Mike Evans or Mike Williams or Keenan Allen. It's possible.
Yeah, there are names out there, but yeah, it's just something in the back of the head. The contract is probably a bit concerning, but if anything, I think it just accelerates his ability to get moved at the deadline or even before the deadline, which is probably a boost to his fantasy stock, and as you said, helps Godwin. Noah's interesting. Also, this is the first year the Rams have had their own first-round pick since 2016. It's funny you say that because on the show on Tuesday, we're talking about how bad the Rams were going to be, and I think Balky said something about how they'll be in the mix for Caleb Williams, and I was like, I doubt it. It's because I said something like the Cardinals are going to have Caleb Williams, and then he's like, I think they have a chance, and I kind of look at it and I'm like, hey, Balky, you might be onto something there. And then I'm like, wait a minute, do they even have their first round pick, or is it like to the Lions? And we looked up, they do have for the first time in 8 years, they have their first round pick. They're going to be bad. Although the Cardinals, if you've said it a lot on this show, there's something to be said similar to why Derek Carr was benched Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk had it. If the Saints benched Derek Carr, because essentially they would owe him a ton of money if he couldn't pass his physical come the next season. So they're saying Kyler, it's owed for like 3 straight years. He's owed over like $29 million if he couldn't pass his physical in March, I believe was it what it was. So there's some people out there like, why they're not going to play him. They're going to make sure he's entirely healthy and not beat up at all, because assuming they're going to have the first overall pick, with how bad that roster is. So I mean, late dart throws, 18th, 19th, 20th, it's probably fine, but I wouldn't put money on Kyler playing this year either. So I'm with you on that. Once kind of that contract details leaked. ESPN was selling the idea of Stafford traded to Miami. ESPN sells the dumbest ideas. I'll say that. I mean, if Tua gets hurt, yeah, I think that's the Dolphins are probably could be in the market. Although I can't tell you, quarterbacks, we haven't gotten to that point in the NFL deadline where we've seen quarterbacks get moved. I don't know if that happens.
Let's not forget the quarterback, draft next year could be very, very, very good off week 1. I know it's just week 1.
No, dude, it's loaded. People said that.
All out
Let's see. Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Shadur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, Michael Penix. I feel like I'm missing one.
You said most of the good ones. I saw there was a list today, but
I'm pretty sure there's a 5th one there. Oh, Riley Leonard from Duke, who's playing up tomorrow night. There is a legit.
Probably gonna be 1 or 2 guys on that list that you don't even know about yet.
Oh yeah, out of nowhere. I mean, I've heard some. There's Washington State's Cam Ward. People like as a sleeper. There's so many.
There's a ton of teams that need them. That like, are they really going to trade a major asset for a guy that
Oh, Joe Milton from Tennessee, if he can kind of do
probably one of the best arms that you'll ever see.
That I don't know if you guys in the chat follow college football, but if you want to go look up Joe Milton, the most what's it called? Just doesn't even look like he's trying. Literally looks like he's just flicking it like pre-game, just throwing around with like a fan, and the ball went 70 yards. And the receiver dropped it too. Just like
if you're a coach, you're drooling to get a guy like that in the can. A lot of things you got to figure out, but
in Vegas, I know he did it last year. Alex loved he was doing the t-shirt tosses. Like kind of say with some t-shirts. And when I'm telling you, Joe Milton's arm in the Tennessee game yesterday looked like he was just doing like a casual t-shirt toss, and just the ball gets nuked
80 yards, nuked down the field, and the guy just dropped it.
Yeah, there's probably going to be it's Brian Raymond. Get Mike Evans to the Lions.
Not a bad spot either. Especially because
who knows with Jamo, yeah.
You don't know. There's no guarantees when he comes back. It's not like he's going to be like, he's going to be right out there. What if Josh Reynolds and Marvin Jones have a good 6 weeks? I mean, it's interesting.
Aging, and Joanna mentioned aging vets seem to head towards home later in the careers. That's true. And I think there's also something said when they're getting traded. Teams, I think you see it in other sports, but I do think there's something said sometimes teams try and reward the guys who have been loyal to them, and Mike Evans has been loyal. It doesn't seem like it's going to maybe end on the most acrimonious of terms, but they might try and move him to a contender so he can kind of play this stretch run, and then you can always touch base back with them in the off season, maybe try and see if something can come up there. But there was a question I saw in the chat I want to get to is where was it? I lost it. It's 11-10. Kyler will be dealt, said Dave Gladstone. There was some question I thought I missed.
Who wants that contract?
Kyler's going to be dealt, and he might mean the offseason, which I think is happening. Oh, I know. It wasn't a question. Where was it? It was Arizona is a hot mess. I'm convinced Gannon was hired to tank. If you're hiring a coach to try and get you the first overall pick, Jonathan Gannon is the number 1 selection behind maybe.
If you're drafting Arizona Cardinals this year, to me, it's Trey McBride, Keontae Ingram, Michael Wilson, like even James Conner's a tough click. He was moving up drafts, and he's kind of like, stuck, and he's getting moved down a little bit now because there's so much uncertainty with that. Like Marquise Brown, like great best ball pick, but like, I mean, you're just hoping he gets traded at the deadline because, I mean, bad teams, they got to throw the ball too. And like a lot of people said, I saw a couple articles this week about it, and it makes a ton of sense. Teams in the NFL can't tank. They can't. They can try all they want, but the thing about tanking that you don't understand is like every one of those guys that are out in the field, we're not talking about the big names, the Marquise Browns, James Connors, guys like that. We're talking about guys that they're trying to put good play on tape to get a job. Guys like Keontae Ingram and, Rondell Moore and Trey McBride, they want to get signed as a free agent, or they want to get, part of the new regime with Caleb Williams. They're not going to go out there and just play terrible because somebody tells them to. So the NFL is different from other sports. Like you could see, like
I'm going to push back a bit, though. I think it's similar because you look at those. It's the same thing for NBA. It's just, granted, in some ways, it's easier in NBA because there's only 5 players in the core and there's such a difference. But those guys aren't showing any less effort, especially when they're competing for a contract. I think there's somebody who said it's harder for teams to tank in the NFL because there's so many different scenarios. And I do think in some ways the difference in talent is less so, right? And there's so much more to it. While in basketball, sometimes individual players, like
you're talking about a 12-man roster. You're talking about guys that
are on the field,
like, Omaha, Nebraska to play in the NBA. Obviously,
but the Cardinals are just one of the worst rosters I've seen in a while.
Oh my God! Just absolutely atrocious on every level.
I think I think there's a genuine chance that they don't win a game.
I think that's definitely in the range of possibilities. I'm very surprised that James Conner and Marquise Brown are still on the team. James Conner's obviously harder to trade because no one's trade for a running back, and there really hasn't been any major running back injuries. But like James Conner with the Dolphins, I know it doesn't fit the speed thing, but it's a great fit. It seems like it makes a ton of sense.
The Cardinals play the Commanders week 1. I could also see the Commanders losing that game, and that's the only Cardinals win of the season, a la the Jaguars in Urban Meyer's first year. When
Sam Howell's not losing that game.
It sold out at FedEx Field. Look at that. New owner. I lived in DC for close to over 20 years of my life, and everyone had said it for at least a decade. If you get Snyder out, the fan base is going to come back, and they've shown that.
But we back and forth.
My favorite part is the Washington fan base is back, assuming that franchise is hopefully on the upswing. And on top of that, Philly fans absolutely despise the new owner. Why? Just because he's made the Sixers a consistent playoff team.
Let's not get on a Sixers rant right now.
I'm not. You are you
know where I stand with those bums.
Yeah, I know you do. But no,
it's just hours.
Besides his little issue with Joe Buck, he thought the Joe Buck this was a handshake. Josh Harris has done a really good job, and that's someone I always love when true fans own the teams because they show he understands that fan.
Yeah, that's why people love Mark Cuban. They won a championship. He's just a cool guy. You can say whatever you want about him, but people are always gonna go to that. When it comes to the novice fan or the guy who doesn't go watch every game. Mark Cuban's definitely somebody that'll get you in the stands. It'll get you excited, win or lose. That's not really that important yet. For a team like that, but just get you back out there, get you excited, win a couple games. It's definitely going to be interesting. And I think Michael just put up there, the survivor polls this year are going to be wild because everybody's going to be picking against the Cardinals and the Rams. So
someone said, I love that Hollywood forced his way out of Baltimore just to end up in this situation.
That guy's an idiot.
He's great friends with Lamar.
It made no sense. Mind blowing to go play with Kyler Murray.
The people want a 3-hour Sixer rant.
No, I can't. I just can't. It's late. It's past my bedtime. One day, Joel Embiid will get out of second round, but it won't be with the Philadelphia 76ers. Thankfully.
At least the Phils are hot.
Love the Phils. Love Bryce Harper. How do you not? If you're a hater, if you're a Phillies hater or not, how do you not love Bryce Harper? You would. Any team that says I would not take Bryce Harper is an absolute liar. We'll talk about we're getting off.
We want to hear about a team that willingly chose not to get Bryce Harper was my New York Yankees.
But
embarrassing organization.
Kids, they're coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get rid of Boone and Cashman doesn't screw it up. But those kids are coming. Dominguez he's coming.
I love how the people, Kyle T saying, I appreciate you guys doing all the streams. Thank you for that love. I love it how we're here, at 11:15 at night, and we're talking about baseball here in this.
We've been on a basketball for the last 30.
This is not what the people want. So the last 4 rounds, we're gonna turn it back.
Let's talk about some kickers.
No, we're not talking about the kickers at all.
Defenses, maybe.
We're talking about, I want to go back to Doug Howe asked the question, has anyone gotten a Burrow Chase Higgins double stack? And I want to ask you just, I don't know how many. I'm sure it's not super common, but as he said, he had to push up, I'm assuming Burrow to get it. I'm sure I'm hoping it's a little bit different. It's definitely different. I don't know how common it is. But then again, this goes back to when Burrow first got hurt. You could start off Jamar Chase, get T. Higgins back on that 2-3 turn, and then Burrow was falling to that 4th, 5th. So I wonder if that little stretch right after the Burrow injury
I'm sure there's plenty out there.
There's definitely more that if the Burrow injury didn't happen, you would have been definitely a little more of a unique build, but that allowed, I think, way more people to get that because he was in the early 5th. So you could have gone first.
More popular than most people think. I mean,
I'm trying to get on Mojo, the stack builder, to see it, but I'm also trying to focus. So I'll do my best. I can't even find it. Yeah, I would recommend going to Mojo for that. I'm not even going to try and deal with that.
Especially now. I mean, people that are drafting late in the fantasy pros, the best ball, and obviously the main events. If you're not a subscriber to Fantasy Mojo, I don't know what you're doing. I mean, you have guys like Cooper Kupp and guys like Jonathan Taylor. You know, some of these like stacks that you're getting to be able to build right now are not stacks that are in even in the system. I mean, you could be the only team with, you know, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Calvin Ridley. You probably are. So, I mean, this is why, like, we have a couple days left in the best ball. We have a week left in the fantasy pros in the main event. Get your butt out there, get your money together, and take some shots, because some of these teams right now, you know, in the last, you know, couple hundred, like I said, main event and best ball, you're going to have some unique builds that everybody else in the tournament that have been drafting the whole last couple months have nowhere close to. And if the build works out, the advantage that you'll have over some teams could be the one that wins you $200,000 or wins you $1 million.
I wanted to ask you a question. Brian Raymond said Phillies have maybe the most likable person in sports in Kyle Schwarber.
Fair.
Who's the most likable person in the NFL?
I mean, to me, it's Jalen Hurts, but not
being no.
Philadelphia Eagles.
Don't know a single person who doesn't like Jason Kelce.
Yeah, we'll just say a non-Philadelphia Eagle.
No. Philadelphia Eagle can count if it's people don't like Jalen Hurts. Kelce, like no one dislikes Jason Kelce at all.
I don't think anybody dislikes Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's just
no, people do, because quarterbacks always get unnecessary hate.
But in the NFL, it's actually
I think it's Jason Kelce.
I'm trying to think of somebody a non-Eagle.
Jamal Williams. Everybody loves
Jamal Williams.
I think the answer is Jason Kelce.
It's definitely the right answer. I'm just trying to think of somebody who's not a Philadelphia Eagle, because it's just a likable team. I mean, the best team in football this year, the Super Bowl winner. It's really hard not to like them.
Honestly, maybe I'm not on the right side of Twitter. I don't see a lot of people who dislike Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow's a good one. Yeah.
George Kittle. Of all the quarterbacks, I think Burrow's probably the most liked.
People love George Kittle.
Yeah, because George Kittle's fun. Just always hurt.
I'm just going through like the top half of the draft to see if anybody jumps. Quarterbacks. No, not really.
Quarterbacks are always tough. That's a great question.
Everybody hates Deshaun Watson. Everybody hates Dak Prescott. Everybody hates Russell Wilson.
Burrow, Kittle. Yeah, Burrow doesn't try, just is.
Yeah,
Zach Thomas. We joke about good question. Kyle T. Respect for keeping me and Turp awake this late. With
JJ Watt was a good one when he played.
Oh, that is a good one. Kyle T. is asking, we joke about kickers, but why do some go so damn early? There's only a 25-30 point difference last year between the top 18 kickers.
I don't know the answer to that question. I have no clue.
Asking the wrong guys.
I've done so far, the kicker's been drafted in the 12th round. I do not understand it, but please, I tell you this, and I mean this. Pay attention, sit down, and listen to this. If you're in my main event, please keep doing it. I really would appreciate it. Take Justin Tucker, take McPherson, take Harrison Butker, and take whoever the heck else you want. Daniel Carson, he's really cool too. He just hit some 50-yard field goals. But just in all seriousness, stop doing it in the 12th round. What do you like? Well, for what? You're not gaining any advantage. There's always going to be a Graham Gano that you can get off the streets. You know, plenty of other guys that are just out there. So just stop.
Leave it Leave it to the last draft that we do main event coverage for there to be a player drafted in the 17th round that I've never heard of.
Denver Broncos running back.
And then I look him up, so I don't like I at least somewhat know now.
He's been getting drafted.
First article, Jaleel McLaughlin expected to be counted on right from the start, and this guy is the NCAA's all-time leading rusher.
Mm-hmm. I never knew his name until a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
full transparency.
Interesting.
But he's definitely a guy that's on my radar now. I'll be on my radar in my next couple of main events that I got coming on, and just a guy that you put in your team and just hope to catch a little lightning in the bottle, because on a team like Denver, you might not know his name, but you always find that guy that like breaks on the scene and takes, Javonte Williams questions, P. Ryan, he's a good NFL running back, but like he's not sexy in any way. And a team like a guy like Sean Payton, who loves, developing and giving a dominant, running back the ball, it's in the realm of possibility. So take a shot. 17th round, you're spending $2,000 on a main event. Why the heck not at this point? Shoot for lightning in the bottle. Justin Ross, great pick.
4 touchdowns in the preseason.
Yeah, he led the.
I mean, this is a bad look for me that I don't know who this guy is, but
we've done so many of these, from the Malik Davis of the world to the Dwayne McBrides to all these guys who have been drafted that I've drafted that we've had on stream. It happens.
I was telling Balky, I would kill for like a list of all the names. It's like that, like in my life's history, like, oh, yep, Aiden from August 1st to August 17th of 2023. You love Sean Tucker. And you're like, oh yeah, Sean Tucker. I remember all the names.
Sean Tucker now.
Who amounted to nothing that I bought into that, like the hype. Jaleel McLaughlin. Interesting. Broward Bravado had a question in the chat. And I think I know it's going to be the same answer from me, and I know you're going to give it. Any feelings towards drafting 2 defenses?
Great idea. If you're doing the main event in the next couple of days, draft 2 defenses. No, you don't draft 2 for what? You're taking away a valuable roster spot that could be that home run running back handcuff, or that,
Washington,
Chase Brown, or that
take Washington
Ingram, or that anybody. Jalen Hyatt, Puka, Justin Ross. Why would you take his 2 defenses over guys like that? For what? There's no defensive advantage. Defense is pure luck. Obviously, you have like the standouts of the year, like the Eagles last year. All those sacks. It's not withstandable. Very good defense, but no. You can always find that defense that comes on, play matchups. You spend a couple bucks. At the end of the season, you just hope that last year, you just don't want defensive touchdowns. You just try to stay away from like the crazy 2 TD games where they put up 20 or 30 or something nuts and just survive that avalanche.
No, yeah. The ones I'd recommend, again, they go in the 17th round here, but Washington plays Arizona the first week of the season. And New Orleans has a great start to this. New Orleans really
defense is a little bit more. I know if you take the defense, like if you take a defense from like 14, 15 down, fine. I'm not doing it. I'm probably waiting to like 17 down, but like we just talked about 2 defenses that are perfect right there. I'm pretty sure Denver plays the Raiders week 1. There's another one that I like. I could be wrong with that.
New Orleans also, I'll check for you, but New Orleans also just the whole year. And obviously people could break out, things could change, but yeah, the division. The Broncos put the Raiders, but the Saints quarterbacks they play is the entire year is like the best quarterback they play might be Jordan Love, or Russ. It's a bad mix of quarterbacks just off of the eye test alone. So they're a defense that I would enjoy. Question for you. Obviously, the first waiver run for leagues that have already happened are coming up on Wednesday. Who do you think, I know it's kind of, again, late, I'm putting you on the spot. Who do you think is going to be the most picked up player in that waiver run? Is it going to be like a Deion Jackson, Evan Hull?
Probably. I could see guys like Deuce Vaughn getting, as a pretty popular ad. Justin Ross will be a popular ad. I mean, it's unknown, but I mean,
Richie James,
that free look,
receivers.
To get that free look, in that game, which is, Richie James. You're going to see a lot of guys that added for $1, in that game, just to toss them in there and see what happens. It's not a bad strategy to do. Besides that, I'm trying to think. Puka will be a big one, especially with the unknown with Cooper Kupp. Besides that, nothing that's really jumping out to me.
I mean, I think, the Colts running backs, I do think Sean Tucker, you do see him get added a lot.
Yeah.
But that's what's going to be fun from Mojo. I'm sure we'll have it out quickly. And I'm sure I'll have some posts up on the FFPC as well about those pickups. But I think Justin Ross is a good shout out. It's kind of, not crazy names, but there's definitely going to be some guys moving. I think the Colts running backs will probably lead that list. Terp, I'm going to kind of ask you as we close down our final main event coverage, right, of the year. We did this last year, right? One, I want to know who's your NFL MVP for this year. I think last year you said Lamar, right? I don't remember. I said Lamar. One of us said Lamar. So who's your NFL MVP?
It was last year.
And then I need your three. I'm stealing from Matthew Berry here. Your three ride or dies in fantasy this year.
Okay.
And on top of that, I might be spoiling. Give the people who are watching late at night a sneak peek. You usually have your tweet with like your 5 hottest takes. I think last year, last year's wasn't great. We won't go over that.
I think out of the 10 that I did, 5 of them were correct. So
hey, man, you're 50%. But okay, so NFL MVP, which was last year, your 3 fantasy ride or dies, and then your 1 hottest take for fantasy this year.
My NFL MVP is going to be Justin Herbert. Wheels up. Really hard not to like everything about them in the offseason with Kellen Moore, adding Quentin Johnson, just a more vertical passing attack. I mean, him or Jalen Hurts to me will be the 2 bets that I place. I mean, I think I saw Jalen Hurts. I haven't looked recently, but I think he was 12-1, which is just crazy to me, especially because he should have won it last year. He would have won it last year if he didn't get hurt. So they're my 2 guys there. My 3 ride or dies. We all know the receiver in Green Bay. I'm not going to try to mention his name anymore because I have a lot of main events coming up, and I just don't want to talk about him anymore. Him is my number 1, and my tweet about him will be that he will finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. That's definitely something that will be one of the 10 that I put out. Second, Antonio Gibson. He's my number 1 owned player right now. Just a guy that I'm very, very, very high on. I just really like Eric Bieniemy and what they're doing there. I don't really trust Brian Robinson. I really feel like Sam Howell's going to take the next step. So Antonio Gibson will be my second. Third.
You have a lot.
I have a lot, so I'm going to try to give a name that's like a little off the wall. Number 3 would be Marvin Mims. I love them coming out. I love them coming out of college. I feel like he landed in one of the best spots. I can see a path where he leads the whole team in targets this year. If everything goes right, Judy doesn't come back when he's supposed to. We don't know what Courtland Sutton was last year real. Was it something that, is something to watch, as the future? I like Courtland Sutton this year, but I really feel like Mims is going to get an opportunity day 1 with Judy being out. If he takes advantage of that opportunity, he's going to be playing a ton. And where he's going in drafts, even now where he's getting moved up, Marvin Mims is definitely a guy that I think is my second highest owned player right now.
Scratch your hottest take. Save that for your fame tweet. Instead of that, give me your deep sleeper. I'm going to change it. So I want your NFL MVP, your 3 ride or dies, and then your deepest sleeper.
My deepest sleeper.
Just like round 16 or later, we'll say usually.
There's like 2 guys that I'm going back and forth on.
You want to give me both?
No, I definitely don't want to give you both. He's probably a little higher. I'll give you 1. Tank Dell.
Okay.
The guy that I've been drafting a ton early. There's so much uncertainty with that team right now at the wide receiver position. With Nico Collins, John Michie doesn't seem like he's setting the world on fire early. Robert Woods is still dusty in there, but I feel like Tank Dell is a guy with something to prove. He's a talented kid, came out of college. He's a rookie, but he should develop with CJ Stroud. The second guy, I'll give you, is Justin Ross. I wish nothing but the best from the kid. Coming, like I said, he probably would have been a first-round pick if everything didn't go wrong with his neck. Made the team. Hopefully day 1 has a little bit of a role and takes that role and runs with it. He's a guy that I've been adding a ton, and I'll give you 1 more because I feel like being nice. A guy that I hated coming out of college, despised him, don't like him at all, but he landed in a great spot. We talked about him. I said I hated him when I put my rookie stuff out right before the draft. Jalen Hyatt. You can't land in a better spot than he did. If he figures out the NFL game and the speed is there, and with that big playability, it might not work early in the season, but he is more talented than Darius Slayton. He is more talented than Hodges and Campbell and Shepard and Robinson and all these guys. So there are three guys that I'm targeting a bunch. Any other cool questions? I like this game. You can give me one really bust. There's one bust.
Yeah, give me
one guy that I'm not drafting at all. I talk about a bunch of guys that I'm not drafting, but where he's being drafted is Najee Harris.
Yeah,
I am on the Jalen Warren versus Najee Harris bandwagon. It could crash. It definitely has some worry attached to it, but I just think Jalen Warren's the best play.
All right, real quick. Will you guys be doing any coverage in Las Vegas? Says Kyle T. Yes, sir. We'll be covering 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, the 10K High Society League. Probably going to be the only coverage we get. It's pack week, but we're going to try and get that in on Thursday at 3:30. Broward Bravado. I mean, Terp, talk about free agent budget. How much should I spend on free agent budget to get Marvin Mims?
A lot of it depends on where you're at receiver position. You don't want to go crazy. I mean, I love Marvin Mims, but we're not talking about maxing out a budget or putting 15-20% out there. I'd say something under $100 if you have a Jerry Jeudy and a Mims, it might make more sense, or a Cooper Kupp, trying to get a guy that's going to get some targets week one, maybe got to put in at your flex. I would say somewhere in the 75 range as just a quick number, thinking off the top of my head. But like Aiden said, we're all going to be out in Vegas. I get out there Wednesday. You get out there Tuesday, I believe. Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday morning.
Tuesday. We're going to be at the party on Thursday. We're going to be running around doing coverages, taking, pictures and all that cool stuff. Come say hi. Don't be a stranger. We don't bite. I'll still make fun of you. You want to show me your team? I'll tell you how bad it sucks or how good it is. I promise you I'll be honest. I always am. But come say hi. Don't be a stranger. Get a drink and let's have some fun.
I'll just say, if you are in Vegas, I will be hard to miss. I will be the 6'7" dude with the camera. So look out for me. Terp, real quick though, I got to give mine. NFL MVP, you said it. I'm gonna go chalk. Jalen Hurts deserved to win it last year. Got hurt was the only reason he didn't. Offensive only, I think, probably gotten better. And I do think also defense has arguably gotten a little bit worse, which could means that the Eagles could be actually throwing later in games than they did last year. My 3 ride or dies. Again, the people who watch these shows know Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'll give you one from each position. Jackson Smith and Jigba is my receiver.
Running back.
CEH. Okay. No.
I had to get it in there. We didn't mention his name once. I had to throw it in there. Keep
running
going.
Running back Jahmyr Gibbs. Quarterback. I'm not gonna quarterback. I already mentioned Juwan. I'll go Juwan Johnson for tight end. I'm giving 4, and then quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Those are my 4 ride or dies. I'll say. I think Juwan's my answer. I had the 3 others in mind. I'm trying to think others for the tight end position, but no, I think I'll go Juwan Johnson. Tua, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Juwan Johnson. And then my biggest bust, Saquon Barkley.
Oof.
I'm gonna go there.
You're gonna regret that one.
Here's why. There's no fantasy rationale behind it. I'm trusting that negative feeling in my gut that I have about him as a player. Is that acceptable? Is that acceptable analysis for you? There's a bad tingle I have for him. I'll just say that.
Gonna get saved.
Can't be any worse than Allen Robinson. He was my number 1 ride or die last year.
That's fair, but
cannot get worse than that.
Oof. Nope.
Hey, I'm going balls to the wall.
I like balls.
What kicker, Aiden?
Kicker.
Daniel Carlson.
I don't even know. I can honestly say this for all the drafts I do. NFL is my life right now for the last two months. I can name probably 15 kickers on teams right now.
Daniel Carlson's
no clue.
Daniel Carlson's my actual answer, by the way. The dude is money. The issue is I don't know if the Raiders are going to score.
Know why it's Graham Gano? Because he's off in week 13 now. I got to worry about the stupid position. That's my answer.
That's going to do it for myself and Terp. We will be back on Thursday live from Las Vegas, covering a 10K. Don't worry though. Also on Tuesday, we have our final Fantasy Pros live draft coverage. That's probably going to be Eric Balkman and myself. We'll figure that out. We don't know exactly who's on, but Tuesday night at 8 p.m. is the 8 p.m. I think it's 8 p.m. It's 8 or 7 p.m. It should be up on the YouTube, so you guys can go check that out if you're interested. It's already listed. But Fantasy Pros coverage on Tuesday, 10K on Thursday, and then the season is upon us. We have some stuff in the works. Me and Terps need to talk, and we might have some stuff popping up during the season. Won't be a ton, but we'll definitely have some stuff out to keep the channel active. And then next time you might be seeing us is going to be the Never Too Early Best Ball. It's going to be here before you know it. Or I'm probably going to have one playoff challenge.
That right now, I think I have 12 drafts in the next 3 days. So
we're going to have a playoff challenge preview. So there's stuff upcoming for us, but we want to thank you guys for everyone the consistent people in the chat, the people, I should say, not the players, but you guys are players in our hearts. The people who always came and watched with us on Sunday nights and were involved in the chat.
Appreciate all of you.
All of it. We appreciate it. Give us a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Next time you'll be seeing us, as we said, Thursday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, 10K buy-in, High Society League in Vegas. And then Tuesday night, we'll also be having Fantasy Pros with probably Eric Balkman. So we'll see you guys then. Thank you again. Happy drafting.
See you guys.